Welcome back to another episode of Engineering Quality Podcast. I'm Roya Lee, and joining me are my fantastic co-hosts, Veronica and Ali. How are you both doing today?
Hi, Riley. Hi, Ellie. I'm doing great. Super excited about today's topic. Incident management is such a crucial part of our industry.
Hey, Riley. Hi, Veronica. I'm pumped too. Incident management doesn't often get the spotlight it deserves. And so I'm super glad that we are shedding some light on it today.
Indeed. So in today's episode, we'll be delving into, as Ali said, the often overlooked aspect of software development, right? Which is incident management. And while incident management is primarily handled by software engineers, testers also play a significant role in this process.
Absolutely. I think before we actually start diving really deep into incident management systems and processes and all of that, how about we take a couple of minutes to define what an incident is, so we can set the level here with everyone. So, in my view, an incident is any event that either disrupts or threatens to disrupt the quality of service in production, right? So for example, a business application going down or a web server running really slowly, they can both hinder the productivity and the quality, and it can qualify as incidents. So usually when we talk about incidents, we are usually referring to events in production. But also some events that can disrupt the path to production could also be determined as an incident. For example, if there is a blocker in an environment that prevents us from pushing anything to production, that would be classified as an incident most of the times. Because if something was to happen in production, we wouldn't be able to fix it. So even though it's an incident, it's a problem on a pre-production environment, if it's blocking our path to production, that could be considered an incident as well. And also the severity of incidents can vary as well. So from a global service crash to intermittent errors that can affect just a small number of users. But we'll discuss severities and other fun topics like that a little bit more detail later.
Yes, and I would like to add that incident is a very official term, but different companies may use different terminology. It can be referred to as a fire or production issue or urgent matter, and any other terms that indicate that it's important and has to be fixed fast. Now that we understand what the incident is, let's define incident management. So incident management is a process used by development and IT operation teams to address unplanned events or service interruptions, as well as to restore the service to its operational states.
Exactly. So you might be wondering, why is it important to have a process for handling incidents, right?
Yeah,
It's pretty funny because we've seen a lot of companies, right, that they don't understand why it's important. And so incident management, it's one of the most critical processes any organization should have and should get right. And it's critical because incidents can cause significant disruptions to business operations. It can affect customer satisfaction and even lead to financial losses. So when managing an incident, it is essential that teams have a plan that enables them to respond effectively for a swift recovery, to communicate clearly with customers, stakeholders, service owners, and other organization members, to collaborate efficiently to resolve the issue faster as a team, removing barriers that delay resolution, and to continuously improve by learning from outages, applying lessons to enhance service, and refining their process for future incidents.
Exactly, really. So the goal really is to minimize the impact of these incidents and to ensure that the services are up and running smoothly again as fast as possible. It's all about being proactive and having a structured approach to handle unforeseen issues. It's really, I think, hard to imagine any organization that's willing to accept an operational disruption without striving to recover swiftly. But some organizations don't have a process in place, so don't have a incident management system in place, thinking that it's okay to just maybe wing it or just deal with it as it goes. But we can lose a lot of time in these situations, and this lost time can really directly translate to lost revenue. And it's a reality that every company is super aware of, I think. So over the past decade, there has been a growing investment in system reliability, with many companies establishing robust incident management processes. But not every incident demands the same level of response. So we're going to dive a little bit into incident severity levels and how different organizations tailor their responses accordingly. Again, reminding that this is the most often used denominations for incident severities, but your organization might call it something different, and that's okay. Let's not get too hung up on vocabulary for now. So the most crucial type of incident is a critical severity incident. It's often referred to either as a SEV0 or SEV1 or P0 or P1, depending on the organization's preference. But for simplicity, during this episode, we're going to use a scale that begins with a SEV1 instead of a SEV0. So for critical severity incidents, we're going to be referring here today as severity 1. These kinds of incidents completely halt crucial business operations. For example, an e-commerce platform outage during peak hours, they demand an immediate all-hands-on-deck response. So that would be classified as a SEV1. To address a SEV1, the teams implement workarounds, they notify stakeholders, and they conduct thorough post-incident reviews to prevent these issues from happening again. The next incident level down from that, it's a high severity incident from critical to high, also known as a SEV2. So these incidents usually involve significant service degradation or a major feature issue, such as a major slowdown in an online banking system. The teams are expected to respond promptly, allocate resources, and provide regular updates to stakeholders and execute quick resolution efforts in a timely manner.
Yes, and continuing on this topic, on the other hand, medium severity incidents, also called SEV3 incidents, involve partial service degradation affecting non-critical functions. Those incidents are being addressed by the teams by assessing the impact, allocating resources during regular business hours, so it's not as fiery anymore. Implementing workarounds if necessary, and documenting incidents for the review. For example, the reporting feature, creation of reports in the application doesn't work. So this can be considered severity-free incidents. And lastly, there is low severity incidents, also called SEV4, which usually have minimal impact, affecting non-critical features or a small number of users. For those incident, teams log and prioritize those incidents within ongoing tasks, resolve them during regular routine maintenance during the sprint, and document them for the future, making sure that we know what to do. If it happens again, hopefully it doesn't, so it has to be some preventions to make sure that we do not have it again. And an example might be addressing a cosmetic bug, UI bug, interface bug that is not affecting any functionality.
That's right, Veronica. And, depending on the severity of the incident, the response and timeline for resolution can be quite different. So it's really important to understand what a severity issue is for your organization. Now let's talk about who is generally involved in incident response and the role the tester plays. So incident response involves a coordinated effort from various roles and teams within an organization to manage and resolve incidents effectively. So here are some of the key participants that you would typically see. And again, depending on your org, it could look a little bit different, but for the most part, you would generally find these people. So you need to have an IRT, which is the incident response team. And this is a specialized group tasked with managing and responding to incidents. So it can include an incident manager, technical experts who diagnose and fix the issues, communication leads who keep stakeholders informed throughout the incident, and not just stakeholders, but also if it's something that you have to update customers or end users, right? And then you would have the incident manager. They would oversee the entire incident response process, ensuring coordinated efforts and prompt actions to resolve the issues are being taken place. And then, of course, you want to ensure that you have subject matter technical experts. These individuals play a critical role because they will be needed to diagnose and fix the technical issues, leveraging their deep knowledge of systems and applications.
Yes, and like you said, really, a communications lead is someone that's really important to have as part of the incident response team. The communications lead is the person that's going to be responsible for updating internal stakeholders, customers, and end users with clear and accurate information throughout the incident lifecycle. So timely information so everyone knows where we are at with a fix and how we are going to get that into production. So a support team, on the other hand, usually handles external user inquiries, and they provide updates on the incident status, ensuring that the users are informed and supported during the incident as well. Then we have external vendors and third-party providers. They might need to be involved in the incident if the incident is pertinent to their product. So we might need to require some coordination for resolution with third-party vendors. We also have IT operations, security teams, legal, compliance. There's a bunch of other teams within the organization that often needs to be brought into the issue so they can help resolve the process and use their expertise as needed. Then we have product managers. Product managers provide insight into affected services. They prioritize the fixes. They make sure that the fix is aligned with the business goals. They communicate with the business stakeholders, who can include executives, decision makers, and they are to be kept informed about the incident's impact on operations and strategic actions as well. Last, but certainly not least, is us, the testers, right? So testers play such a critical role. Like we assist in root cause analysis of incidents, we verify the fixes, conduct regression testing to ensure system stability amongst other things as well. We can often be the subject matter technical expert on it as well, that's been called in to work on this issue. We also collaborate with the team to identify preventative actions to avoid similar incidents happening in the future. So in my experience, the tester's role is really in the incident management can vary widely from organization to organization and from bug to bug, really. But because we can be subject matter experts on the system, in the environment and in testing as well, we can add a ton of value to the entire process.
That's so true, Ellie. Clear role responsibilities and communication channels are essential for effective incident management. And as you mentioned, testers are playing a crucial role in this. And that is where the tools can help us to do this more efficiently. It's important to remember that tools alone won't solve your incident management issues or any issues at all. What you need to do is to make sure that you have a solid process in place before you add any new tool to the mix. Only this way tool can be effective.
True.
And talking about tools, incident management requires more than just a single tool, by the way. It's not enough. Jira is not enough. Well, by the way, Jira is project management tool, right?
I find that it's a whole support system for Agile, though. It's a whole platform that supports Agile.
Yeah, right now it's more than just like a project management tool.
Yeah.
But originally it was built to be the project management tool, and then they put a bunch of additional things on top of that. Right. So as I mentioned, incident management needs more than one tool to set up the right process. It needs to be the right combination of tools, practices, and people. And let's discuss some of the most essential tool categories for effective incident management. First and foremost, having an incident tracking tool is crucial. It's a cornerstone of incident management. Every incident needs to be tracked and documented to identify trends and analyze resolution times and incident volumes over time. The number and duration of incidents are key metrics that provide insights into the system's health.
Yeah, and then people can configure Jira, right, to do things like this, but it is not as effective as tools that are made specifically for incident tracking and for
Yeah,
keeping all that historical data for, all the analysis that needs to be done and all of that. So that's
that's
important
correct.
to note as well.
That's a good point, really. And another vital tool for successful incident response is alerting system. So what is alerting system? It actually a system that monitors all the applications and have an ability to send messages, or like in other words, alerts, right, to notify if something is wrong. Alerting system also usually manages on-call rotations and notifying engineers who is on call currently. And those notifications usually called pages. And this term has originated from the pager device used before cell phone. So it was like long time ago. I have never even used pager, but I know that they existed. I saw them in the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyhow, so this is where the term originated. And well, if you ever worked with someone from like IT, you probably have heard that, oh, I just got paged. This is what it means. It means that like they are on call and they need to look at something.
Not that they have a pager.
No, they don't have a page. There are several tools that might enhance incident management. They usually include communication system for chat and video conferencing, documentation tools to track actions and improvements, post incidents, and status pages to communicate status of the system to internal and external customers. I want to share some of my previous experience. Some time ago, I worked at a company that did not have an incident tracking tool. Yes, I
Wow.
know. And when we had an incident, all the updates were handled through emails, making it difficult to identify the incident status at any given time. So it was very hard to go through entire chain of email and understand what exactly the current status is. It was just a disaster.
Also, can you imagine if you are a key stakeholder and you don't check your email at that time and you are needed to
Yeah.
help to resolve the incident?
Yeah, exactly. It was no notification system too, right? So it was very vague on call, more like, I don't know, on call in the spreadsheet. Like it was like different weeks that were assigned to developers. And it was no automatic notification of engineers if there is something wrong. It was pretty much like you need to call them or hope that they will see an email.
Oh, wow.
So everyone was like expected to be like always checking their emails after hours, which is not a great work-life balance. It was stressful for everyone involved in business and in engineering, both. Additionally, on top of those two, right, we didn't have the on-call, we didn't have incident management monitoring. We also didn't have alerting system. So we did not have much of monitoring. Engineers were learning about issues through human triggered emails instead of like learning from real monitors that are monitoring the applications. Well, again, like it sounds very bad, but I want to mention that the system wasn't something that has to be up 24/7. And most of the issues that we had usually were occurring outside of regular business hours of usage. And the situations usually did not affect real users, but it meant that in most of the cases, those incidents were occurring after the business hours for engineers too, which meant that they have to somehow be on top of things without any tools that can help them to make their life easier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that was not good. But I'm sure back then too, there weren't as many incident tools available, right? So I'm hoping now that even that company, you should probably reach out to someone who works there now to say, hey, how are things with incident management these days? But no, truly, incident management tools are so needed because incidents are inevitable as systems grow in scale and complexity. But each incident is also a valuable learning opportunity. So they reveal system vulnerabilities, help mitigate future incidents, and bring teams together to improve for the next time. It's very important that after an incident, you conduct an incident post-mortem or post-incident review. It is the best way to analyze what happened and capture any lessons learned. I remember at a previous company that I worked, we often held incident post-mortems, which allowed the opportunity for all the key people involved in the incident to come together to discuss the details of the incident. We would discuss why it happened, its impact, the actions taken to mitigate and resolve it, and steps to prevent it from happening again. Some may say tools like version control, feature flags, and continuous delivery allow many incidents to be quickly undone by rolling back changes. And undone, I put that in air quotes because really. However, this often doesn't help in understanding what failed and why. So imagine you have an incident, you roll back, and okay, everything is good, and then next week you have the same incident again. If we were having postmortems, right, you wouldn't have that issue. You'd be able to analyze the incident, understand why it happened, and put the correct measures in place to prevent something like that from happening again. So this is why having these postmortems should be essential.
Yeah, that's so true. Really, you mentioned that there are different ways how we can undo the incident. And you mentioned version control, feature flags, right? Can you share a little bit more what feature flags are?
Yeah, so feature flags is a tool that we use in software development to be able to release features to production behind a flag, hence the name feature flag, where we can hide certain things from the end users until we're ready to actually go live or display it to everyone. So not only in production, but also in different environments, right? So we can have flags for different features and we can turn them on or enable them or disable them as needed, whether it's for testing or if we want to launch a feature and then we decide we no longer want to launch this feature, or even you can launch a feature for a limited time, right? So like if you're running a promotion where you're offering some special with your product that's only running for 3 months, you can turn it on at the beginning of the promotion and disable it at the end of the promotion instead of completely removing that feature from production.
Exactly. And that's why if we, for example, have an issue with a feature that recently was developed, it's very likely still using feature flag. So in case if we find some issues with this feature in production, we can just easily toggle off the flag and remove this feature from production without needing any engineering interaction with the code to disable the feature.
Yeah, that's a super useful tool to have in our tool belts as systems get more complicated and more complex. It's great to have that, and used well, feature flags are really great. And the same thing, going back to the postmortems, the same with postmortems. If they are done well, that they can be that framework for learning from your incidents and transforming our issues and our problems into progress. I think it can build trust with customers, with colleagues, and with end users by showing the team that we are committed to minimizing future incidents and minimizing impact to our stakeholders. In my experience, postmortems are powerful and they can be a great tool to improve a whole organization's quality. But only if they're done well, right? So I've worked in places where we do postmortems, but then we don't do anything about what we find. So we don't track the action items, we don't follow up, and that's another. It's more wasting everybody's time. But postmortem findings should be integrated into your planning process to ensure that remediation work identified during the review is prioritized alongside other tasks. So usually when we have postmortem reviews or post-incident reviews, any action items ideally would add a Jira ticket to it that can be then added, assigned to someone and added to the next sprint so they can work on it. So skipping a formal postmortem can be really tempting sometimes if we think we understand the cause or if we have fixed the issue really quickly. But I think team members can really benefit from a clear understanding of the incident, and they can improve the service to both the team and the customers by having a postmortem. So do not give in to that temptation of not having a postmortem, no matter how much we think we understand what happened. So, in summary, engaging in a structured, collaborative postmortem process allows everyone to contribute their insights, building trust and resiliency within the team. And I'll pause here a little bit to talk about the importance of psychological safety in postmortems, though. It's really easy to see which teams have psychological safety and which ones don't, just by observing how postmortems go. Again, postmortems are not just about documenting incidents and its resolution. They are really a deep dive on root causes and risk analysis. And we can only get there if everyone in the room feels really safe enough to share what happened. If anyone, even smells blame, no one's going to put their hand up for that. So we need to remember there is no blaming. And I mean, no blaming, right? I find that having a prime directive, like the same one that we usually use during retrospectives, are good enough. They help us to set the scene at the beginning of the postmortem meeting as well. So when I'm participating or running postmortems, I like to kind of run through that prime directive, saying, we did the best we could with the time that we had, that we're not here to blame anybody. So another super important point is to make sure that everyone who should be present in the postmortem is present as well, not just the engineer and the tester. So all the other roles that we talked about in the incident management up the top, a lot of them might need to be involved as well. So don't forget that.
That's so right, Ellie. And our incident management process doesn't need to stop at the end of postmortem. Once we have all those findings from our postmortem meeting, it's very important to make sure that findings from postmortem is shared across other teams, not only with the team who has been working on the incident resolution. And why is it important? Exactly the same things that Ellie mentioned: psychological safety, right? Building the trust across engineering organization. So many teams can actually learn from this. It's also sometimes maybe we want to share it even with our customers, to issue the note about okay, this is what happened and we have been working on this. We want to be transparent with you, right? Building trust not only inside the organization, but also with our customers who we care about. And also, I think it's important to make sure that we are talking about these incidents, right? Incidents, the findings that we found with leadership. Why is that? Because it would help to start the conversation about what are the tech debt that we still have, and we need to work on. This would help us to advocate for spending some time on fixing those long-standing issues that are in there, because we are working in an old code base and we wanted to refactor it for quite some time, but we never have time. So, and having these data points that, okay, we had X amount of incidents, and those are the root causes, they might trigger and might help leadership to be comfortable with spending more time on reliability and investing into reliability of our applications.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been at companies that have good incident management processes in place, right? But then there are some teams within the company that don't necessarily follow the incident management process as it is and the way that they should. And what happens is, when it comes to the post-mortem part of the incident management process, it's done like a quarter of the way. So the team is getting together, we're having the meetings, we're reviewing the incident, we're verbally discussing, right? But a lot of times that written aspect is missing. And it's so important to have the postmortem documented in written format, for one, to be able to share it, like Veronica mentioned, and just to have it documented, the historical data of exactly what happened and when it happened. And so with that, I think it's a good point to dive into the $1 million question, right? So how do we prevent incidents in production? How do we prevent incidents in production? So first things first, let's face the music. It is impossible to have a bug-free environment. No matter how much software vendors try to convince us otherwise, oh, buy this software, it will get rid of all your bugs, or it can't happen, it won't happen, right? And so we need to accept that bugs are just an inevitable part of software development. Software is just way too complex these days. But hey, don't lose hope just yet. You never know. So the key is not to avoid bugs entirely, but to ensure we don't encounter the same ones repeatedly and to catch the most critical bugs before they reach production. So how do we do that? There are so many ways. My favorite ones are by taking a risk-based approach to testing, using current test strategies, and using a good dose of critical thinking and product understanding.
I love that you said critical thinking, really, because I think that combining critical thinking with a solid automation strategy can be a great way to prevent bugs. We hear a lot about 100% automation. We talked about in a previous episode about, testers that are not going to be needed anymore, automation. But we need, if we do combine critical thinking, good exploratory testing with a solid automation strategy, that's a very good way for us to prevent bugs in production and otherwise. And of course, as we've been talking about in this podcast, one crucial step is to have a robust incident management process, because when a bug does slip through, and they will slip through,
Yes,
we
they
need
will.
to exactly. We need to share the knowledge post-incident. We need to be able to catch it really quickly. We need to be able to fix it quickly, and then share that knowledge as well. So learning from the past to prevent future issues, it's all about continuous improvement. So another way is to shift tests left. It's that buzzword that we can't get enough of. It means that finding bugs as early as possible in the development life cycle. So combine a great critical thinking strategy with automation testing, and you have a robust bug prevention system. Hey, there you go. Sounds simple, right?
Yeah, very simple.
And lastly, though, a last thing I wanted to mention here is that it's essential for us to have a solid CI/CD pipeline, a continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline, because it's like having a security checkpoint before anything goes live.
Yeah, that's so true, Ellie, so true. A well-designed CI pipeline with the right checks in place can really save a lot of stress and keep those gray hair at bay for engineers. I don't want to have a lot of gray hair. I have enough already. I'm done with it. And for those bugs that do sneak through to production, we need continuous production monitoring and robust alerting, right? The systems that I mentioned, the companies.
Not emails.
No, not emails, please, and not human-originated emails. Let it be emails, but it has to be automatic, right? It has to be triggered by the monitors, or alerts has to be triggered by monitors, not by humans.
Exactly.
Yes. Robust alerting, it's all about catching issues quickly and minimizing impact. And now let's talk about less known but powerful tool, which is called pre-mortem. We already talked about postmortems, right? So pre-mortem, it's kind of the cousin of postmortem. It's a proactive cousin of postmortem. So what is pre-mortem actually? Well, we can have entire episode to talk about pre-mortems, but right now I'll try to give a brief explanation what it is. Pre-mortem is a way for the team to pause before the development even starts, to think about what could go wrong. What, for example, when we would release this new feature that we are working on, what can go wrong? What are the different pitfalls that we can identify right away? What are the weak areas that we need to make sure that we are looking at and testing properly? How can we roll back the feature if something is not working. And all of this are the things that can be discussed before development even starts. That's why it's called pre-mortem.
That's right, Veronica. So this way, all of those things that we spoke about that need to happen in the post-mortem, when you're actually in the process of trying to resolve an incident, you don't have to be figuring out, how do I do this? Well, how do I roll back? How can I cherry pick this? Or do I have this system in place? In the pre-mortem, you should already have the understanding and have the documentation of how all that should work in the event that you need it.
Yeah, that's true. And I want to wrap up this conversation about bugs in production and say we just cannot prevent bugs entirely in production. But what we can do, we can certainly outsmart them with the right strategies and the processes in place. And one of those processes is a robust incident management process.
All right. So well said. Thank you for wrapping that up, Veronica. So now we want to move on to our mailbag question of the day. So one of our listeners has asked, looking back on your experiences, what advice would you give to developers who may feel overwhelmed by incident management processes and the associated documentation? How can they navigate these challenges more effectively? So what advice would you give to developers?
Okay. So the first thing that I would do as a person who is overwhelmed is try to understand why those processes are in place. So there are two different outcomes out of this. Either like they would find out the reason why those processes were put in place and what is the reasoning behind those processes that put in place, or they figure out that this is a process for the sake of process, right? So it might be two different directions that it will go to. And in the first option, if it were me, it's very important for me to understand why am I doing something. So if I know why, then I'm constantly becoming at ease with it. But if there is something that I need to do just because someone have told that needs to be done this way, this is the time to actually question it. Maybe it's time for the team to change the process. Right? It shouldn't be like the process. Well, we built the process for incident management and we use it like we built it 10 years ago and we still use it because this is how we did it for 10 years. Well, it doesn't work this way. Everything evolves and all the processes have to evolve with software together. So I feel like, well, it might be a good time to speak up and ask the team to review the processes that we have if it doesn't really work.
I agree. Yeah, I'm the same way, Veronica. For me, it has to make sense, or I might resist a little bit with doing it if it doesn't make sense to me. So I think one of the biggest advice that I would give to developers is to be open to a new point of view, or having an open mindset or an understanding of why it's done, and voice any issues or any concerns that they have, because like you mentioned, Veronica, it could be that the process is just unnecessarily overcomplicated and it's something that we need to simplify to make it easier to adhere to. The other thing too is, Ali, you mentioned earlier that psychological trust part of it, right? So if that is an issue, where I've seen a lot of cases in retros or in postmortems where developers don't speak up, engineers don't speak up because they're worried about any implications, right? It doesn't feel like a safe space to really say how they're feeling. So essentially, we want to make sure that we're identifying the issues, if any, and making the necessary changes to get rid of whatever is making it overwhelming for developers.
Yeah, I'll just double click on that. I think, both of you mentioned just speak up. I think that's a big point here. Every time I hear anyone in a team say that they're overwhelmed, it's a red flag for me. I want to, dig in and understand why they're feeling overwhelmed. Usually by the point that you're feeling overwhelmed, you've been doing this for a long time already. So I want to understand, why has this been going on for a long time? But find someone that you trust and speak up about it. And, being overwhelmed is not something that you want to be feeling about anything in your day-to-day work, be it incident management or anything else?
Well, I feel like we answered this question. If we didn't, please send us an email or reach out to us in our social media channels that we will share at the end of the podcast.
And if you feel we didn't answer the question correctly, let us know what advice you would give, right? So we're opening the question to the rest of you too. Tell us what advice you would give to the developers if you had this question.
Exactly. Let's do a joint effort. And now let's move on to our tip of the day segment. And today we are diving into the topic of on-call rotation, since we are talking about incident management, right? So on-call rotation involves team members taking turns being available outside of regular working hours. Engineers are assigned specific shifts, such as daily or weekly, during which they must be reachable and prepared to respond if there are any issues with production systems or services their team manages. When an incident occurs during their shift, it's their responsibility to assess the situation and initiate the necessary actions to resolve it. This could involve troubleshooting, seeking assistance from colleagues, or escalating the issues if it's particularly severe.
Yes, because the goal of the on-call rotation is really to distribute the workload evenly so that no one single person in the team is constantly on call, which helps maintain team morale and prevent burnout as well. So before ending their on-call shift, the engineer pass on any ongoing issues or critical information to the next person to ensure continuity. They also document all actions taken up to that point as well. And as we discussed earlier today, the team also relies on monitoring tools, alerts, and communication platforms to manage incidents effectively. The primary objective is to ensure that systems operate smoothly and remain operational even during times when team members are not officially on duty.
Yeah, well, that brings us to the end of the tip of the day and also the end of today's episode on incident management. We hope you found our discussion insightful and that it gave you a better understanding of the importance of having robust processes and tools in place. Remember, effective incident management isn't just about resolving issues quickly. It's about learning from them to improve system reliability and prevent future incidents.
Absolutely, really. It's been a great conversation, and I think we covered a lot of valuable ground here today. From understanding the different roles involved in incident management to the significance of having the right tools, it's clear that a proactive and well-coordination approach is key. Thank you all for tuning in, and don't forget to implement some of the practices we discussed today to keep your systems running smoothly.
I couldn't agree more. It's all about teamwork, communication, and continuous improvement. If you take away one thing from today's episode, let it be the importance of being prepared and having a clear plan in place. Also, a special thanks to Atlassian and Fire Hydrant Company blogs, which we used as valuable resources while preparing for this podcast episode. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to diving into more topics on engineering quality in our next episodes.
Yes, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insights and discussions on software testing and development. And of course, follow us on Instagram at engineeringquality_podcast and on X, formerly Twitter, at engineeringqual. That's engineering QUAL. See you next time on the Engineering Quality Podcast. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.